In problem 12.2, we are given another piecewise function, which in this case has an output of postage, in other words, how much do we spend to send a letter, and it has an input of weight, how much does the letter weigh. So it pretty much just tells you, hey, if your letter weighs this much, then you have to pay this much for the postage. So now what they want us to do here is use this piecewise function to answer a couple of questions. If our letter weighs 1 ounce, how much do we have to pay to send that letter? So I'm going to use blue for this one. So I come over here, I find 1 ounce on my ounces axis, it's right here, and I kind of just scroll my eyes up until I find the graph. Now you'll notice there are actually 2 points right here. It looks at first like there are 2 points. There's the closed dot here, and then there's also the open circle right above it. Now remember from doing inequalities before, we use a closed circle, the filled in one, if we want to include that point. And we use an open circle if we don't want to include that point. So I'm going to make that note here. Closed means we include it. Open, we don't. So that means that even though it looks like there's 2 points here, only the closed filled in one counts, which means that I'm using that point, the filled in point, right there. In other words, if my letter weighs 1 ounce, I pay 50 cents. Or they wrote it as $0.5. Now if it weighs 1.1 ounce, I'm going to use a slightly different color here. 1.1 is, right around in here. So I'll trace my arrow up, and look, 1.1 ounce hits very clearly on this line here, which that seems to be about maybe 72 cents or so. So costs me $0.72 to send a 1.1 ounce letter. And we'll do one last color. If it weighs 0.9 ounces, which is right around here, again, I'll trace up and see where that hits the graph, and that hits right there, which is just like the 1 ounce letter, 50 cents. So those actually have the same price, 50 cents both times. Now the second question wants us to go the other direction. This one, they tell us that the letter costs 92 cents to mail, and they want to know how much does it weigh. So we're going the other way. So let's go ahead and let's grab red as our color here. Now if it costs 92 cents, let's say it's right below $1, it's right around in here. I'll come over here, and it's actually anything on this line costs me 92 cents. But again, we have to remember this one is not included, but the closed circle is. So what is that range of prices, or range of ounces, sorry? That is from $2 ounces all the way up to 3 ounces. So let's see, if it costs 92 cents to mail, then that means that the weight must have been less than or equal to 3 ounces and must have been greater than 2 ounces. Again, like I talked about, this here is because it's an open circle, and this one here is because it's a closed circle. That's important when it comes to inequalities. So we've used our function here to answer a couple questions. Now let's look at what Kieran and Mai have done, which is they have written some rules that they think represent this function. But both of them have made some mistakes here. Now, when you look at this, they've got all the prices over here. Oh, I guess I was off. It was 71 cents, not 72. And they all have the same number of ounces over on the right-hand side. But their inequalities are where they have some different stuff going on. Specifically, Kieran uses entirely inequalities that are less than or equal to. They all have the underline. whereas my uses inequalities that have no underlines. They are strictly less than inequalities. So if we come back up here, let's look at 50 cents. 50 cents, this line right here, does not include 0 weight, which means that all of these are wrong. And then for my, if we look at hers, well, the other end of the line, that 50-cent line, remember that was a closed circle right there. So 1 ounce should be included. This part here is wrong. Those should be less than or equal to symbols, not just less than. So if we want to write a corrected set of rules, what it should look like, let's see, I'm going to call this the price as a function of W, should look something like this. 50 cents, 71 cents, right? All of these they had correct. But this should go 0 is less than W is less than or equal to 1. 1 is less than W is less than or equal to 2, and so on. Because of the way that the graph was set up, where only one end of the line had those points included. Again, I'll emphasize this one more time. This inequality symbol means it is not included. 3 is not included in this inequality, which happens when you have an open circle. This inequality symbol means it is included in that inequality. And this happens when you have a closed circle, or one that is filled in. So that is how we can go about working with an inequality, or sorry, a piecewise function, and also making sure we're being very careful with the inequality symbols.